say good evening, Los Angeles. How are we feeling? That's what we love. Okay, thank you all for being here. This is chapter 2 of our celebration of all things Gillermo del Toro. And you are in for a treat because you are going to see Hellboy, Hellboy 2, and then Tomorrow we're going to kick off early in the morning, 11 a.m. We're going to do the early years, so we're doing, let me get this right, we're going to do Kronos, Devil's Backbone, and then Mimic. Gillermo will be joining that. We're going to open up a couple of tickets for that, and then after that we're going to do the movie that came from the heavens, Pan's Labyrinth. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everybody at the American Cinematheque, and particularly the volunteers. We have Sam up in the projection booth. We can have a round of applause. We made too many shirts. We ran out of shirts. So
Straight story! Straight story!
I know we're here to celebrate Gillermo, but last year, our free festival shirt was the immortal quote that Gillermo gave me when I met him as a kid, going to Pan's Labyrinth. Oh my God, he blew it. He blew it.
That's it.
Thank you!
Now you can introduce me.
I'm so happy.
So we make the t-shirts, and we give the t-shirts, and then Gillermo comes and throws them out. So now we've done the t-shirts. This man has made 12 films that you've seen. He has another film that you haven't, so that's lucky 13. He's not just a great filmmaker, he's a great human. What he does on the screen mirrors who he is in real life. It is just an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to welcome the one, the only, the real GDT. He's the King of Kings.
Here. Sean, I owe you that 4K, man. I got caught in traffic. The 101 was fucked up.
He's your pharmacist?
My pharmacist. He's a great guy. Yeah,
Sean,
there it is.
hey,
Sean works in the pharmacy and comes to every fucking Beyond Fest. Take that applause, Sean. Great pharmacist. My diet pills are right on time.
I think that Sean, we'll meet you in the parking lot for the good stuff afterwards, okay?
Sounds fun.
So we're not gonna do a real deep Q&A here. We're just
introduce the fucking movies.
we're gonna talk really quickly. So we've got Hellboy, Hellboy 2, and Blade 2, all comic book adaptations.
Yes.
And your history with comic books go real deep. You used to drive up from Mexico, load up your car with Meltdown comics. And then go back down. Why Hellboy, why Blade? Out of all of the comics.
Well, it's funny you say that because Hellboy, the comic, sustained me through Mimic. I was going through Mimic, which was the worst experience I've ever had in a movie set. And, by the way, tomorrow I'll spill the beans. I'll tell you some stuff.
And we have the director's cut tomorrow.
Yeah, we have the director, which means a few extra minutes, but I got fucked out of recognition. But it's much better than the one before. And I would go every couple of months or whenever I would go to Silver Snail in Toronto, which is a great comic store, and I like that. And I would say, is the new Hellboy here? And those images sustained me through all of Mimic, pre-production, production, and post. And I just thought this is one, Mike Mignola, whom I've been following from his DC years, you know, from all the World of Krypton and this and that. He had graduated from being the guy with that did small feet and big lips to a guy that did such atmosphere. Dracula, Far From That Grey Mouser, the Hellraiser comics. He had evolved into this guy, and I thought I would love to adapt it to film. And I'll tell you the story after we can have it.
At what point did you reach out to him?
I reached out to Larry Gordon, and I said I would like to do that. I would like to meet with him. We met in Portland, Oregon, where he lived back then. We went to Powell's Books and we shopped together, and we realized we read more or less the same things. And I said, there's only one actor that can play Hellboy. And Mike says, you know, I have an actor in mind. And I said, well, who? And he said, Ron Brown. I said, bingo. And I had already promised Ron he would play. We had gone to Golden Apple. And I said, this is our next movie together. You know, and you know, I think the beauty of it is, you know, I didn't waver. It took about 7 or 8 years. They would say, we want, they said, what do you think about Vin Diesel? What do you think about, and I would say, Ron Perlman. And they would say, what about Nicolas Cage? I said, what about Ron Perlman? They would say, well, what about The Rock? And I said, what about Billy Goldberg directing it? You know, really too old a reference. But I said, no. I took a few meetings, and I said, okay, I took the meeting, now can we go back to Ron Perlman? There was a very famous producer that came to us and said, look, I'll co-produce and I'll finance it completely, but it has to be somebody else. I said, then it has to be somebody else directing, because that's not my movie. And, you know, I really think there is a perfect role for many actors. Actors are born for a certain role. Ron was born for Hellboy.
You can't imagine anyone else in that role, and I would imagine the relationship, you going to bat for him all those years. We had him through, and we actually had a screening with him, and I was like, tell us about Guillermo del Toro. And he just went, that's my fucking brother. And
I'll tell you what, when we were shooting Chronos, I had no idea how movies work in America. So we ran out of money. And I went to Ron's trailer, and I said, listen to me, we are not gonna be able to pay you, but you have my word as a gentleman that we will. And I thought, that's good enough in Mexico, right? He stayed. His agent said, you're on the next plane back to LA, and he said, I'm staying. I believe in this guy, I believe in that movie. And you don't play with that, and then loyalty is mutual.
yeah, it's amazing. And you've been with him ever since. I mean, we just watched Nightmare Alley earlier, and so he's a strong guy in there.
Well, it's funny. The first person to propose Nightmare Alley was Ron. In 1993, he said, there's this movie with Tyrone Power, we gotta get an illegal bootleg, because it's hard to get, and we watched it together, and we watched it, and I said, okay. I said, I wanna play the Tyrone Power role. He was 32 or something like that. And we went to Fox, and said, can we make a new version? They said, it's a library title. I go, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand anything. And they said, no. And I said, okay. And I read the novel, and I said to Ron, the novel's pretty goddamn good. We should do the novel. But my meetings back then were disastrous. My first meeting was at Fox. My agent says, you're gonna go pitch for The Fly 2. I go, great. So I go and they sit down, they said, so we're doing The Fly 2, what do you think? I said, I think you shouldn't make it. I thought that was pitching. And they validated my ticket and sent me home.
I'm glad you didn't make that movie.
No, you know, I really believe that. I think, and by the way, to some degree, I'm still the same fucking guy.
Yeah.
I still say it sort of like that. And Blade 2, here's the funny story. When Mike DeLuca, Peter Frankel, and David Goyer were going to do Blade 1, they said, oh, we should talk to Guillermo. He did Chronos. I'm super glad Steve Norrington did it. I think that's the movie that changed the whole paradigm. You know, everything changed with Blade,
Yeah.
the first one. And then they came. I became unemployable for 4 years after Mimic. I was not. No one would hire me. I developed, but they didn't know it had gone wrong because of me. Back then, the Weinsteins were patron saints of film, and no one believed me. And I went, well, you know. By the way, I have a photo of Bob Weinstein over my toilet.
Yeah.
And he got my face. How you doing? It's true. So he walked to the house and at any rate, then Pedro Moldovar, my father was kidnapped, and during the kidnapping, Pedro came to see me, and he had offered to do a movie. I said, well, I have this idea, Devil's Backbone, there's this screenplay called The Bomb, and I'm going to combine it all. And he said, we're doing it, we're making it. And then Blade 2 came in. And they said, postpone Devil's Backbone, shoot this first, and then we'll pay Almodovar a fee. And I said, no, you wait for me.
Yeah.
Because I want to do Devil's Backbone first. And if you wait for me, then I'm worth it. If I'm not, if you can film it with somebody else, shoot it with somebody else. And I went and did Devil's Backbone. And then
And did that time, did you feel like you had to get Devil's Backbone out of you so that you could then get into Blade?
I needed my footing.
Yeah.
You know, I needed to regain the stability, the gravity. Like when I talked to Pedro Almodovar, I said, well, the only condition I have is I have to have final cut. And Pedro said, what is a final cut? Well, but I cut the movie, he says. Who else is going to cut it? And I had a little tear. I got really, because I tell you, money means more money, less freedom. And you have to always be mindful of that equation. No matter how big the movie, I always do it for 30, 40, 50% less than it should be, because that gives me freedom. You know, and once I did that, I went and had a blast with Blade 2. I had a blast.
Donnie Yen?
Donnie Yen?
You brought in Donnie Yen?
I brought him in.
Yeah.
I brought him in. I was a huge fan of him. I contacted him. I said, look, you know, if you can play a role, but I want you to stage 2 of the fights, not all the fights, just 2 of the fights. I said, absolutely. He came in, he said, my only condition is that I can do a triple kick on one wide shot without cutting. He said, in Hong Kong, we don't cut. And I said, promise, I'll give you a slow motion, triple kick, wide angle, you know, and he came in, he was playing Snowman. And there was a Chinese character on his armor, which was painted by the foremost Canadian expert in Chinese writing. And Donnie Yen came in and said, that looks like shit. Who wrote it? But, you know, he was great. I wrote a part for him for Pacific Rim 2. I wrote him a central role. I've been trying to work with Donnie again. What a gentleman, what an athlete, what a... I mean, look, very few times I get all quivery. Donnie Yen, I get quivery. Yeah.
He makes me...
And I quiver easily.
Yeah. And then the success of Blade, that really set you up for Hellboy.
Well, yeah, what happened is, I was trying to get Hellboy off the ground, and I wanted to make changes to the screenplay of Blade 2. I was talking to Goyer, and my agent said, you want Hellboy? I said, you do Hellboy, you do Blade 2. Because no one's going to say, oh yeah, Hellboy from Devil's Backbone, or Mimic, or Chrono. You need to prove your big action chops, you know. Blade 2 was opening, I called Mike Mignola on Thursday, and I said, if the movie opened #1, and I said, if they don't bring my Hellboy between Monday and Wednesday, we're fucked.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Joe Roth called between Monday and Wednesday and said, let's do it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It feels, I'm sure you love all of your films. They're all your children in some capacity. But it feels like there's something special about your affinity to Hellboy,
Yeah.
Ron, Mike, bringing all that together.
Well, I wrote Hellboy as me.
Yeah.
And like Mike wrote Hellboy as his dad and him, a mixture of that. And I couldn't only write Hellboy as me. Like the second one is very biographical, because it was me dealing with the aftermath of becoming known after Pan's Labyrinth. you know, and me trying to deal with being looked at and being liked or not liked publicly, you know. So, and the first one was about how I felt, you know, about as being an awkward guy growing up and falling in love, and et cetera, et cetera. So every movie I write, there's something deeply biographical about Nomad, on way two, you know, which is a rehearsal for Frankenstein in a way, yeah.
What should people look for as they watch these films tonight? Like, what specific things do you want them to take away from each of these?
You know, what you do, if you watch the movies in order or not, but you watch them all together, you start seeing echoes that bounce from one to the other, to the other, to the other, you know. Whether it's a gesture like the rosary on the wrist, which is a mimic, or the choice being an element, you know, which is in Pan's Labyrinth, and it's on Hellboy. You're not who you're born. You are who you become, you know. Is it how we start life or how we end it? I think that many of us are born and we are told what we are. From the beginning, we're told, you're a boy, you're a good boy, you're Catholic, you're this, you're that, and we are not that. We are who we are. To people, we may be great or obscene or fantastic or despicable. We're neither, none of those things. We simply are. And I think that's what the Hellboy was, 1 and 2, about the identity of being who you first are told you are, and then becoming who you choose to be. Because I think we all have that choice. We can be facing a firing squad and say, fuck you, guys. We can, you know, or we can submit and say, they're gonna kill me. They're not gonna kill you, they're just gonna kill your body. That's okay. I'm Mexican, I can take it.
I love that we have these films together, and I think, and we're going to get into the movies really quickly, but Hellboy 2 in particular feels like that's the one where you probably, and I could be wrong, right, but just as a viewer, it feels like that's the one where you got to let loose the most, because you had most, I imagine, most creative freedom. You'd established the world of your Hellboy, and so the second one, you could just flex, you could just have a really good time. You were really in your flow at that point. Is that what we're watching?
Yeah.
Because it's also just so fucking fun.
Mike Mignola comes to paint model kits on Sundays at the house when he was living in LA. And he always tells this anecdote, so it's okay to tell it. Mike said on Hellboy 2, he said, well, Hellboy wouldn't do that. And he said, not yours, mine would. And it's the moment where I say, look, if I'm gonna take it to a trilogy, I'm not gonna be able to take it to a trilogy the way the comics are. I have to take it, my idea for the third movie was he becomes the Beast of the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You know, and there's an archangel that the Nazis have kept in stasis, and they release him to try to kill Hellboy and destroy the world, blah, blah, blah. So that's not in the comics. So I said, well, second one is the pivot. And I think is where you see all the movies and Pan's Labyrinth and it merge into Hellboy 2. To me, it's one of my favorite movies. And the stakes about what we lose when we lose fantasy, when we lose the capacity to dream, which is where we are now, by the way. You know, I think is pivotal to me. I mean, dreaming is a highly political position. Allowing hope, fantasy is a highly political position. And they say, well, can you see the world? I say, in spite of the world, I'll dream. That's a tough position. That's not weakness, that's strength. And I think Hellboy 2 is a defense of a world that should not fit and is dying, which is a world of the